if Courtney is actually saying that she is that and she's okay with that, then I don't have to alert her with embarrassment every single time that is a possibility because she's already owned it. And when you already own it, the magic is that it doesn't bother you anymore. And you aren't afraid of that. Your dreams will always require your healing, and you need to know that in order to move forward. If you feel stuck in your creativity, your art, your business, or your life, then it's essential to understand that you are being asked to heal what's in the way of you creating what you dream about. This podcast is all about the relationship between your emotional health and your creativity. I'm Courtney Lancaster, and this is the Heal Create podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Heal Create podcast. I am Courtney. I'm your host. I am so glad that you're here. And if this is the first time that you're listening because you saw the title, then welcome. You're in good company. We are a bunch of people in pursuit of healing what is in the way of us pursuing our ultimate dreams and goals. I take your dreams very seriously. I think that the dreams that are in you are God's plan to heal the world. I think my family needs your dreams to come true. I think my community and my country and the world that I live in need your dreams to come true. I think that the dreams inside of you are the plan for your own healing, because your dreams will always require your healing, and the plan for the world to heal as well. I have to say that you're definitely going to hear my kids playing in the background. I realized halfway through saying all of that that's definitely them playing loudly in the background. So we're going to welcome that noise into this recording. Today, we are going to be talking about something that I talked about on my @HealCreate page on Instagram. And basically, it's this idea of embarrassment. A lot of people are subconsciously stuck because of a fear of embarrassment, and there is so much to say about that, but I want to try and simplify it as much as possible because you might not even realize that you are feeling held back by the fear of embarrassment. But if you have ever judged anyone else for showing up, or if you have ever noticed that people that you love are judging others or feeling cringy because other people have shown up, then you most likely have the same fear of being the subject of that judgment. Did you know that embarrassment is actually the second most painful emotion that you can experience, second to grief, loss? Grief as in loss of a loved one, heavy grief. Embarrassment is so incredibly painful, and there's a reason for that. And before we even go into what it is and what to do with that, I want you to just think about a time when you felt really embarrassed. We don't want to go into a shame spiral, but just a time when you felt really embarrassed. I actually had an experience one time. I thought this would be a funny time to tell you my most embarrassing moment. Have you ever played that game? It's one of my favorite dinner party games. What's your most embarrassing moment? Just because I think the stories of what embarrasses different people is so fascinating. And I feel like I have really great stories to bring to the table. So I'm going to tell you top of the top, my worst one. And basically, I was at dinner with my boss's wife. So I was working for a company in my 20s. I was late 20s before I had kids. And I was working for a company. It was a tutoring company, and I was the manager. And the owner and his wife would come in often, and I hit it off with his wife, and she was nice and fancy and older than me. And I remember just really wanting to make a good impression. And so she invited me out to dinner, and it was for her birthday. She was having dinner at this local Mexican restaurant and invited a bunch of people for just a birthday dinner. And I felt really honored to be invited and excited. And I'm sitting at this table of probably 15 women, and we're all sitting around the table, and she's sitting clear on the other side of the table. And she said, "Hey, Courtney, did you ever see that movie? Did you ever see that movie Fireproof that I told you to see?" So this dates how this shows how old the story is. It was mid early 2000s. And I crinkled my nose and I was like, "I did actually. I did not love it. I thought it was really cheesy. I thought it was, which are all still opinions that I hold today. No offense. I thought it was really cheesy. I thought it was silly. And I didn't think that Kirk Cameron's acting was the best." And I'm talking and I'm just going on. And I look up and she's looking at me like with eyes wide open. And she's shaking her head like, "Stop, stop, no, stop, stop." And I slowed my roll and I was like, why? And the woman next to her raised her hand and said, "Kirk Cameron is my brother." And when I tell you that I could have passed out from embarrassment, that's very nearly true. It wasn't DJ Tanner. It wasn't Kirk Cameron's little sister, who we all know and love. I'm sure this other sister is lovely as well, but it was his older sister who I didn't know or recognize at all. And Kirk Cameron was her little brother. You guys. It still makes my cheeks flush when I think about it. What was worse was that I apologized so hard. I think I made everybody in the whole room just want to leave. I was mortified. And I understand, as I've been researching embarrassment for this episode, because it sparked a lot of interest on Instagram when I posted it, I've just been realizing like, oh gosh, yeah, this makes so much sense. This feeling of embarrassment actually serves a function. It's trying to warn us about doing anything that might get us kicked out of a tribe. It's like a mammalian physiological response to anything that our brain has stored as evidence of things you could possibly do to get you judged, which your body thinks would actually lead to you being abandoned or kicked out of a group of people, because we have the same nervous system that we have had all through, millions of years ago. It's based on survival. That's the number one thing that your body and your nervous system care about. They do not care about you pursuing your dreams. As a matter of fact, if I've heard Sarah Baldwin say this, if your nervous system had to choose between keeping you safe and you pursuing your dreams, it's going to keep you safe and connected to a tribe at all costs. This is where a connection to God is so incredibly essential to a healthy human being, because a connection to God and a connection to self is this forever eternal thing. And it is what actually empowers you to step forward knowing that you will be okay no matter what. And we know now there's, 8 billion people in the world. You're always going to find your people. But if you've been hiding or you have been shape-shifting, who do you want me to be? I'll be this person. What do you want? Then basically you have learned that there's a right way to be connected and to stay in the group and to stay loved. And there is a way that will get you disconnected. Now, this is all an illusion. The rules are all made up. There's no right or wrong way to belong. But our brain takes as evidence everything that we've ever witnessed, anything that got anyone else kicked out or judged. And it will just be this list of things that we should and shouldn't do. Embarrassment is trying to keep you safe. It is a painful but vital response. Researchers believe that the purpose of embarrassment is to make people feel badly about their social or personal mistakes as a form of internal feedback so that they learn not to repeat the error. So if they can keep themselves from making those errors, then they have a better chance of belonging and staying safe and staying connected to people and resources. So working with embarrassment is really interesting. It's it's sort of an obvious thing. Like nobody wants to feel embarrassed, especially now we know it's the most painful thing. Like that's how important social connection is to your nervous system. It's vital. It's not just like a luxury. It's absolutely vital. And we're all looking for it and we all need it, while consequently all being really afraid of intimacy. But that's another episode. But we need it. Yeah, I just saw actually something today. A holistic psychologist posted about how depression is the lack of emotional intimacy. And your body shuts down. We all know, if you've listened to this podcast long enough, you know that depression is not a disorder. Depression is a nervous system state of shutdown because your body thinks there's a threat so huge, I can't survive it. I'm going to completely shut you down so that you don't have to feel it. And that comes from a perceived lack of connection to love and safety and belonging. This is why, Brene Brown talks about it. Spirituality, certainly, it's all about connection. You can belong to yourself and you can experience the feeling of belonging to God. And what happens when you go on that journey of discovering, how did I get disconnected from myself? How do I let my body know that I'm connected no matter what, so it can relax enough to pursue my dreams without fear of judgment? What happens is you find your people. You find people who have also done the work, and you begin to belong in ways that you can't even imagine. I just, or maybe you can, but for a lot of us who felt really disconnected, it's hard to imagine the level of connection waiting for us on the other side of a healing journey, but it's absolutely available to all. It really is. And it takes a bit of a trust fall, because a lot of the healing that we do, especially in religious cultures or in tight-knit family systems or systems where emotional health isn't necessarily talked about, when we're going on that journey, we do face a fear of feeling like we don't know if we're going to lose our people or not. And it's not even a super deep subconscious fear. I find when I work with people, it's almost close to the surface, and it doesn't even seem weird. We don't want to be, like, for example, people will think that if they are doing, the work of going back into their childhood, that they're going to find that they won't want to have a relationship with their parents anymore. That's a really huge one, because maybe they've seen other people who had to sever ties with their parents. Or maybe they're afraid that a lot of people I find in religious systems are afraid of trauma work being kind of woo-woo, and they're afraid of what's going to happen if their, church finds out, or their leaders or their mentors or whatever, or they're going to stop doing the coping mechanisms, maybe the socially acceptable coping mechanisms of like partying or drinking or whatever, because it's ruining their life, so that they can pursue more wholeness. But just by not participating, they're facing the fear of being alone. There's so many ways that the fear of disconnection from others is actually at the root of so much of why we don't move forward. And embarrassment is like the warning flag, telling us there could be something that we actually do that would get us disconnected or feel the fear of our own disconnection. And that's why we want to really go easy on embarrassment. We want to recognize that it's a really painful emotion. And this is why somatic work is so important. And what I work on with my clients is actually noticing the experience in your body of what embarrassment feels like. The experience of any emotion is really, really a new thing for honestly, I think for our generation. Like we didn't understand that emotions were physical experiences, because your brain is so much louder with the stories that come in following your uncomfortable emotions. I mean, very closely following. It's not like a long wait time. It's like you have a painful emotion, your brain is flooded with stories of trying to make meaning of it, and thinks your whole life is falling apart, or thinks that it's that person's fault or whatever. And we are just now recognizing that, like, we can notice that those stories come up, and some of them are really painful. Intrusive thoughts are really painful, but we can notice that those stories come up and build our capacity, usually with, safe support, if that's what you need. I certainly did. But we can build our capacity to recognize, like, oh, my brain's sending me a ton of stories, and even use it as a clue. There must be a negative, or I would say not negative, but a painful emotion that my body doesn't know is safe to feel. And how do you teach your body that it's safe to feel an uncomfortable emotion like embarrassment? Well, you go Hillary McBride talks about it being like bird watching. When you experience a feeling of shame or embarrassment or anger or fear or sadness, you notice in your body what's happening. So for example, like I said, when I was telling that story, I noticed that my cheeks really flushed. I remember when that story happened, I went into the bathroom at this Mexican restaurant and I was talking to my best friend and I'm like, oh my God, my ass is sweating. I'm just going to die. I can't believe this just happened. She, of course, is like laughing hysterically because how did that happen? Seriously. Who gossips about a celebrity and not knowing that their family member is right in front of them? Learned my freaking lesson. Anyways, the physical experience that I had of embarrassment that day was that feeling of I'm sweating. Like I'm literally, my body is expelling so much energy because that feeling of embarrassment is saying, run away, run away. And when you can notice, just like, I'm like trying to go on with this story because I have points to get to. And I'm just like, Courtney, somatically experiencing your emotions looks like tracking the actual location of them in your body and describing what that feels like. So your stomach might clench up. Ugh. You know that feeling when your stomach just like tightens or there's just a rock in your stomach? Or some people will say if they experience a lot of shame, this like black hole around their heart space, or a tightening around their throat, a tightening of their jaw, and they'll just feel this like heaviness over them, or they'll feel a lot of energy and they'll notice that they want to like shake their hands, or like they just are restless and they need to move. Noticing those, the location of the feelings, the experiences in your body, and describing them. This feels like a tightness, a knife. This feels black. This feels heavy or slimy, whatever. That actually teaches your brain like, oh, but I'm alive. If I can describe the emotion, then maybe there's not a lion chasing me. Maybe if I can describe the emotion, then maybe I'm not at a risk of being kicked out of a tribe forever and abandoned and left for dead. That is one of the ways that we can move through these really painful experiences. I'm noticing even for myself, there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff going on with music and just a ton of really fun stuff. And I'm like trying to figure out how to honestly share it with the world, share it with you guys. And just thinking about, social media being everybody's stage. And it's, I think, a really beautiful way to share your art and to connect with other people and to create communities. And I think if you can curate it correctly, you guys know this, I think social media is it's just an incredible time to be alive. Such a powerful tool. But even I notice this invisible wall come up every time I'm thinking about like posting music stuff. And it's like, it's not ridiculous. It makes perfect sense based on what we've been through. I've got a lot of, to be honest, pretty judgmental people in my childhood history and in my family. And it's in my programming to be very, very alert and attuned to everyone around me to make sure that I'm doing and saying the right thing to keep me from being judged. And that is such a powerful way of keeping me safe. There's a lot of compassion there, but it is keeping me from actually connecting to people through my art. Not for forever. This is all, what we're all working through, but it's so fascinating. It's so fascinating to me. This is a really important thing to understand. This is just a physical experience based on evidence in your brain that you can reprogram by feeling the emotion in your body and then telling yourself an updated version of the story. The updated version of your story is hopefully something like, you get to show up. You get to pursue what lights you up. I will never leave you. You are so loved by whatever spiritual connection you have, God, Mother Earth, God, angels, universe, whatever. My relationship to God, it's so grounding and it's eternal. The Bible says he's written eternity on our hearts. And I think that applies to a lot of different things, but it's this eternal sense of connection to a loving God is your birthright. And it's the thing that as conscious humans in this day and age, we get to actually really lean into as a means of an anchor for when we do scary things. It's our anchor, that spiritual connection to something greater and that real deep self-compassion with ourselves. So there's something that I've been working through and I would say studying just kind of personally for the past year. And it's this thing called shadow work. And we want to talk about how to move through the experience of embarrassment when it comes up. But even beyond that, if you're ready to resolve feelings of shame and embarrassment, then you want to look into shadow work. And it is also something that I do with my clients. And it's basically, shadow work it was introduced to me by Cheryl Paul. You guys probably know. She's one of my favorite teachers. She's a Jungian psychologist and an anxiety expert. And she is very much about, what you don't own owns you. And Carl Jung was the person that founded shadow work. And I'll read this to you. It says, the term shadow work comes from the concept of the shadow self, which was developed by Swiss psychoanalyst Carl Jung. Jung believed that people have unconscious aspects of their personality that they don't identify with, such as repressed emotions, desires, fears, and traits that society or personal standards deem unacceptable. He calls these aspects the shadow and theorized that ignoring or suppressing them can lead to psychological imbalance and hinder personal growth. Jung proposed that shadow work is a solution to the divide between the conscious and unconscious mind, and that it involves recognizing and accepting these dark aspects of the personality. Okay, so here's what that means. Anything that you don't feel safe to be as a kid, you are going to, if you don't do your work, pretend like that part of you doesn't exist. And this can be good or bad things. And I'm not talking about the things that you are afraid that you are. This is really important. For those that have anxiety, if this doesn't track with you, you can just throw it out. But I just want to caveat for anybody who really struggles with anxiety, there are a lot of things that come from shame that you're afraid that you are. Like you're afraid that I almost don't even want to trigger anyone. Let me think of a medium example. A lot of people with anxiety will be afraid that they're like secretly a bad person or secretly not who they thought they were. That's not what this is. And you are not who you hope that you aren't. Another way to say that is you are actually who you hope that you are. You are not the things that you're shaming, like protecting you from danger part of you is afraid that you are and accusing you of being. Shadow work is actually the work of looking at all of the parts of you that you are really scared of being and owning them. So a hard example of this would be, one of my shadow aspects would be fake. You're such a fake. I remember this is something my brother used to say to me. This is something that or like a try hard. You're trying, oh my God, you're trying so hard. This is something that I would like in my innocence, in my like maybe some cluelessness, but honestly in my joy, I would like be dancing or singing or like talking really fast or like trying to engage with people. And a couple of times there were people in my childhood that would be like, oh my God, like she's literally trying so hard. I was not a cool kid. I was super overweight. I really had a lot of like insecurities, but that one was just devastating to me because I mean, I was trying, but I didn't know that was a bad thing to be trying. I think what they were actually saying was I just wasn't cool. And so it became my mission to like be so socially attuned and just really clued in at all times and to always try and be like chill and like funny and the life of the party. I never ever wanted to be caught or called trying too hard. Blech, never. And so I just decided, this is in my, we develop these like rules that we have for ourselves in our childhood. In my early teens, especially, I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to be super cool all the time. And If you know me, you know that it didn't work out for me the way that part of me thought it would. But part of shadow work for me has been looking at the part of me that was actually trying hard, that actually was clueless, that didn't know, that just wanted to be accepted, and just loving that part of me. Because if my brain is so terrified that somebody's going to think that I'm trying too hard, then I will not show up. Because embarrassment will be the red flag, the big giant red waving flag that's saying, Courtney, oh my gosh, if you show up in this way, people are going to think that you're trying too hard. And that's so embarrassing. We have Emily and I, Emily's my co-host. We have a episode on this called The Cure for Cringe. Also, we'll link it in the show notes. Such a great episode to listen to. Shadow work goes a bit deeper, and it actually wants you to identify with the parts of you that you are have always been afraid that you would be judged by, the parts of you that you tried not to become, that you tried not to accept, and really own it. Really own it as in like, yeah, you know what? Sometimes I am. Sometimes I was. What you don't own owns you. When you get to that point where you just start looking at the parts of you that you have been terrified to be perceived as, and you decide, I'm just going to accept that that could be true in certain situations, the charge in your nervous system goes down so dramatically, and your brain starts to get the picture that like, oh, this isn't actually scary anymore. Like if Courtney is actually owning the fact that she might be perceived as a tryhard, she might even be a tryhard. I don't know if that's even the way to say it. We'll just use that. If Courtney is actually saying that she is that and she's okay with that, then I don't have to alert her with embarrassment every single time that is a possibility, because she's already owned it. And when you already own it, the magic is that it doesn't bother you anymore, and you aren't afraid of that. There are also good things that you can put in your shadow. Like if you've kind of dimmed your light because you are afraid of outshining other people, a lot of your shadow work is actually owning how great you actually are, how amazing you actually are, and how like really owning what people would say, whatever you were afraid people would say about you. I want you to act like that could be true, and that's okay with me. That's shadow work in a nutshell. It takes, usually it takes guidance. It takes some real bravery, which is a sign of your true self. Courage is calm, curious, compassionate, courageous. Courage is a sign that you are in your authentic true self. And when you can use that bravery to really own these different parts of you, both good and bad, that you had to just pretend like didn't exist so that you could stay connected or stay connected, stay safe, stay not judged. You step into your authentic self more and more. And there's always, Cheryl Paul would say, there's gold inside your shadow, which means what it magically happens. And what I found is that every part of me that I cut off, it's called disintegration. So they're disintegrated parts. They're not integrated into the whole. There's still parts of me. There have been, in the last 10 years, there were parts of me that I was like, oh, I don't even want to look at that. I don't want to look at that. Oh my gosh. When we get brave enough to look at those parts of us and be like, oh my gosh, oh, yeah. I guess that's not that scary. But I probably was that. I probably do have the ability to be that sometimes. Yeah. That's okay though. It's not who my authentic self is. I love that part of me. She was just trying to survive. There's just no bad parts of you. The more that you can show compassion on those parts of you that you've tried to hide, the less embarrassment will need to come up to warn you that you're not safe, because it will start to get the picture that you're safe no matter what, because you are with you no matter what. So that's embarrassment. And shadow work, a bit of shadow work. Shadow work would actually be a really great episode in and of itself to do, but I definitely encourage you to look into some of the different shadow work books out there if you are interested, because while it's probably the hardest work I think that a human can do psychologically, you do need a lot of a basis of safety before you go into these parts. Because if you put them in your shadow, meaning if you pretended like they didn't exist and you just were trying to do whatever you could to not be those things, then you've actually trained your body to be afraid of them. So often what will happen when you go to these parts of you and you think about these concepts and these things that you've tried not to be being true, your nervous system will usually have a reaction, and it'll take some time to let that reaction come up and process it in a productive way, and then continue on. So like little bit by little bit, we want to own our shadow, be with ourselves, reintegrate these parts of us, and know that, you know, a little anxiety around that, a little fear, maybe, you know, as you're processing, lots of things can come up. Knowing that that's normal will help you. But this work of owning every part of you is so the gospel to me, the gospel of Jesus. It's just, it's so inclusive of all of the different parts of us, and getting to create your life based on your authentic, true, best self, highest self, is a completely different experience than trying to create your life based on the version of yourself that you think will get the most love. That's what I wish for you, for everyone, for all of us. So guys, happy summer. I hope that you are already just getting ready to have some really amazing memories and some amazing times. And just remember, with those negative or painful emotions, notice where they're at in your body. Notice where they're at. Breathe into them. Just imagine breathing love into them. You can always look up, I have a course on my website called the Heal Create course, which has 4 really powerful meditations for you to be with yourself. We have music from Ben Potter, and I'm speaking over the music as you are in a restful state so that you can go into your subconscious and really be with these parts of you and create inner safety over time by listening to these meditations. So that is always a resource for you. And yeah, I guess that's it for today. Also, I hope you enjoyed my most embarrassing moment. Please, will somebody, as you're listening to this podcast, please, to make me feel better for sharing this with all of you, write me, Courtney at courtneyandheart.com, and tell me what your embarrassing moment is, please. You don't have to tell me your most embarrassing moment, but just like a embarrassing moment, just so I know we're all, you know, on the same page in the same club. So I love you guys, and I hope you have such a great summer. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Heal Create podcast. If you have enjoyed this podcast at all, we would love if you would subscribe, rate it, send it to your friends. That would really help us get this message out, this message of empowering people towards emotionally sustainable creativity. Also, we have a PDF for you. So there's an exercise that I created called Inspiration Mirroring. And basically, it is for those that are looking to get acquainted with their authentic, truest self, based on the idea that whatever inspires you embodies your potential. And so if you want to get started on that journey today of really understanding who you are at your core, the person that you hope you are, then you can go to the link in my bio on Instagram or go to my website and download that PDF. I think that's all. Have a beautiful day.